We're going to watch this together. This is 9 upcoming video games being sent out to die by What Culture Gaming. Let's see what they have to say about
Making a
this.
video game, even a bad one, is so much harder than anyone outside of games development can ever fully comprehend. For one of many reasons,
And that's true. I just
a
want to make
publisher
games
might
for,
decide to
and it's a
send a
pain in
game
the
out
ass.
knowing full well that it's either an inferior product or hasn't got a chance in hell of being a commercial success. Whatever the circumstances, and regardless of who is to blame, these 10 upcoming video games are all being released to what seems guaranteed to be critical and/or commercial failure.
Dude, like, just what I've seen so far, even of those visuals, if those are the games, they already look absolutely terrible. Like, they looked actually awful.
Love to be wrong for sure, but the writing seems very much on the wall for these titles. I'm Jess from What Culture, and here are 9 upcoming video games being sent out to die. Number 9, Skull and Bones. We'll be
Never
seeing
heard of
Ubisoft
it.
a lot on this list, beginning with a game that also showed up on last year's list of the same name, Skull and Bones. Announced way back at E3 2017, the publisher's
2017. Has this game been worked on for 6 years?
pirate-themed action-adventure game was effectively an attempt to spin Assassin's Creed Black Flag's naval combat off into its own full-fat AAA title, an idea that, on paper, should have been quick and easy. Yet Skull and Bones missed
I don't know about on paper to be quick and easy. Doing naval combat is actually so difficult from a game design standpoint. It's actually not straightforward as like just walking on land and doing quests and stuff. It's like way harder. There's buoyancy, there's floating, there's like destructibles, there's how do you make there's so much to it. How do you okay, here's one for you. How do you sync a player who's moving up and down on the boat and make sure that he's not clipping through the boat and stuff? Like, there's so many things that you have to figure out for this.
18 release, with word going quiet until the end of 2020, when it was said to have been rebooted with a new vision. Last summer, it was finally dated for November 18 of that year, but was ultimately pushed back to March 9 of this year, before recently being delayed again to a vague 2023 to 2024 fiscal year date.
Oh my, how are they getting funding? Are they funded from like a GoFundMe? If so, it's probably just a scam, but it's not from a GoFundMe, then I don't know how they're affording this. Like, who's backing? Is there some like crazy rich NFT guy just backing this or something?
It's painfully clear that Ubi has a dud on their hands here and will eventually.
Or is it Ubisoft making? Oh my, I didn't even realize. Is Ubisoft actually making this? They're making a spin-off of their own thing. I wasn't even paying attention to that. Okay, well, that explains why they had the budget. Man, that's just money dump, though.
Just put it out to be done with. Ubisoft needs to release it eventually, as the game was heavily subsidized by the Singaporean government.
Wait, the game was subsidized by Singaporean government. Is that a thing? Like, I don't know. I feel like I would never see that in America. Can you imagine in America the government subsidizing a video game? I don't know. Has that ever happened? If so, I've never heard of that happening. That's so crazy.
But with anonymous playtesters recently suggesting it's still in rough shape, it's not looking like it'll enjoy a Phoenix-like resurrection.
Yeah, that sounds bad. That sounds like it might end up like a Cyberpunk scenario. When they finally release it, they're going to do it just because they got forced to do it. It's going to be a buggy mess, which I can understand how it becomes a buggy mess. Well, especially because Ubisoft's making it. And they're making a game then that is not their normal formula, which their normal formula is just copy-paste Assassin's Creed mechanics. If they're actually going to try to build their own thing, like I don't know, it's not something they have a ton of experience doing, but also making naval combat and the way that I saw in what they showed so far, where things are exploding, wood is splintering, there's all these things, cannons moving around and stuff. And that's actually really, really hard to do. Like, you got to be really, really good at game development to do that. Also, I don't know what game engine they use. Depending on what game engine they use, it could make it an entire nightmare to try to do all that stuff.
Expect Skull and Bones to unceremoniously slither into storefronts sometime over the next year or so, if the new release window sticks, that is. And it'll hit storefronts sometime over the next
unlocks,
year or so,
repair
if
Bob
the new
terracotta
release
armor.
window
Okay.
sticks, that is. And it'll probably be quickly forgotten amid a whiff of indifference from critics and players alike.
I don't know. Will it be forgotten? I mean, Cyberpunk was never forgotten. It's possible it's never forgotten. It just depends. Like, honestly, though, we'll just see. If the game comes out and it's fun, it doesn't matter if it's a buggy mess. Like, honestly, like, if it's a buggy mess, yeah, there's a lot of players who'll lose because it's a buggy mess. But if the gameplay mechanics are fun, if the video game is fun, it'll still make a hit. You know what I mean?
Number 8, the Crew Motorfest. Considering that both of Ubisoft's The Crew games failed to make much of a dent in the open-world racing sphere, few were
I like we just hit that guy on the motorcycle and it just had like no impact at all.
expecting the publisher to pursue a third entry. Yet the recently revealed threequel, The Crew Motifest, is due to drop later this year, and is blatantly attempting to imitate the style and gameplay template of the extremely successful Forza Horizon series. On one hand, borrowing from the kings of the genre makes a certain amount of sense, but considering that neither of the Crew games had solid vehicular handling or compelling multiplayer, is there much reason to believe that this will feel like anything but a desperate facsimile of its clear inspiration?
Yeah, I mean, here we are again with Ubisoft straying from the Assassin's Creed formula, and then suddenly they don't know how to make a game. Like, I could totally see it happening.
For anyone with an Xbox or PC, there's very little incentive to throw your money down for this game, especially when you can play the tried and tested Forza Horizon 5 on Game Pass for a nominal fee. As such, it's easy to see the Crew Motorfest underperforming at retail and putting the final nail in the coffin for the underwhelming franchise. The initial online response hasn't been encouraging for its sales at least, and given Ubisoft's penchant for aggressively chasing both trends and formulas, it's also tough to be optimistic about its quality. Number 7.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about first of all, I'm not a fan of racing games, man. I know like some people are crazy fans of that stuff. I could never get into racing games. Like my whole life, it's never been a thing. I've tried playing them. I remember Need for Speed, the OG racing game, basically. I just couldn't do it, man. Like it's just not me. But even with that being said, that I don't know. That game didn't look very good to me, at least.
7. The Lord of the Rings, Gollum.
I'm curious about this one. I haven't heard about this one in ages. I mean, honestly, the premise for this sounded like a super boring ass game. Like I love Lord of the Rings. I love that environment, that world. But this just sounded like a terrible idea for a video game.
Another game that appeared on our list last year, The Lord of the Rings Gollum.
And why does Gollum look like an actual small child in this?
It was originally intended.
What the? Is that what he's going to look like? Is this going to be one of those scenarios like the Sonic movie where the first iteration of him looked so bad that they had to delay the movie to redo how he looked because he looked so bad?
To release last September to coincide with the Amazon series The Lord of the Rings: The Rings of Power. But last summer, the date was pushed back a few months before developers Daedalic Entertainment confirmed in January that it was now targeting a non-specific spring-summer date. While it makes sense to...
Why does he look like this? Did Gollum find the ring when he was like 5 years old? He literally looks like he's 5 years old. That is not what he looked like in the movie, not even close. He was taller. I mean, he's obviously still shorter. But he didn't look like this. This looks like baby-like, like childlike.
To take your time to get a Lord of the Rings themed title right.
This is so weird. Why does he look like that? Why does he look like that? Oh my goodness.
Sadly, almost everything we've seen from Gollum suggests it's a dud in the making. Daedalic Entertainment, best known for its low-profile point-and-click adventure games, have never dealt with an IP this huge before.
They seriously? These are the games that company has made before this?
And it shows. Gollum looks like a painfully low-budget stealth action game, and has major nobody asked for this energy radiating from every fiber of its being.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody asked for this energy. That actually is so accurate. But also, I just can't get over, I mean, let's go back for just a sec. We'll go forward again. I mean, I guess when they have that style is what they think looks normal, this style of visual,
point-and-click
I could see why they made, look at these people. I see why they made him look so weird and childlike.
For this energy, dag and move on every fiber of its being. At some point, you just have to lay the
Did you see the way he jumped? Look at the way he jumps right here.
Every fiber of its being. At some point, you just have to lay the goose egg and move on, and it's safe to say that few but the most die-hard Rings fans are going to be giving this one much attention at all.
Yeah, I don't. That is. I remember when I first heard it, I was like, "But why?" And not only that, but now that I'm seeing it, it looks like shit. I'm sorry if anyone thinks it looks good. It looks like shit. It looks terrible. It looks like an awful game. It looks, I don't know. Makes me think of when they made Star Fox Adventures, and it was just like a knockoff by some random company that just got the IP for just one game, basically. And it was the worst Star Fox game ever made. It's like, it feels like it's gonna be one of those things.
Tron Identity. Even though Disney apparently cares enough about the Tron franchise to have a third...
I don't know why I'm sure there's Tron fans who would love to see Tron video games, but it's like outside of an arcade game where you're trying to cut people off with the like encircling them, I just don't see how you can make a game out of this. Like I guess I could see how you can make it, but why? I don't understand.
In the works, you'd barely know it considering how a new Tron video game is being quietly dumped in a few weeks with zero fanfare. Bithell Games, the acclaimed developer of Thomas Was Alone, Subsurface Circular, and John Wick Hex, is working on Tron Identity, a game which combines visual novel storytelling with puzzle-based gameplay to tell a detective story set thousands of years after the last movie, Tron Legacy.
I don't know anything about the Tron universe, but does something being thousands of years after the movie make sense in the Tron universe, because thousands of years is a long time, man.
Now, while there's certainly potential here, you have to wonder what Disney was thinking in greenlighting such a low-concept Tron game. You know what people love Tron for? Gladiatorial combat and light cycle battles, not investigative noir styles.
I guess I'm completely out of the loop. I know somebody's gonna be so mad about this, but I didn't know Tron extended beyond anything other than the motorcycle thing where you're leaving a trail and you cut people off. I had no idea there was more to Tron than that. I'm sure there is, but I had no idea.
Puzzle solving. More to the point,
I didn't know it
the
was
game comes
gladiatorial
out in
combat.
April. Yet you'd be forgiven for failing to realize this, and worse still, it's being bafflingly released as a timed console exclusive on Nintendo Switch alongside a PC release. Given the studio's prior indie successes, it's easy to root for this one to succeed, but it doesn't really feel like Disney is giving it any added support or visibility at all. Number 5.
I don't know. Yeah, from what I saw, it didn't look very good. I can see like these. Man, this is a good video so far, man. These games all look like terrible. Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time remake. They're making a remake of this?
Time remake. To Ubisoft's mild credit, they didn't see the overwhelmingly negative reaction to the Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time remake's first trailer, and simply plow full speed ahead, releasing the dumpster fire regardless. The initial gameplay trailer was widely dinged by fans who found the graphical fidelity lacking.
Whoa.
And quite rightly felt that
Ubisoft
was simply trying to squeeze some extra cash out of.
Oh, is this the original? Oh, okay, this must be the original. I mean, to be fair, it looks better than the original, but not by much.
Dormant IP without sufficient effort. The pushback date caused Ubisoft to delay the game from its original January.
Wait. We saw an outpouring of feedback from you on this beloved franchise. Is your passion support that is driving our development teams to make the best game? I don't believe that for a second. I don't believe that for even the slightest second. With that said, we have made the decision to shift the release of Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time remake to a later date. This extra development time will enable our teams to deliver a remake that feels fresh while remaining faithful to the original. We understand the update might come as a surprise, and we'll continue to keep you posted on the progress of Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time remake. In the meantime, we want to thank you all for your ongoing support.
2021 release date, and more than 2 years later, we still don't have a new date for it. Last May, Ubisoft confirmed that development had switched from Indian studios Ubisoft Mumbai and Ubisoft Pune to Ubisoft Montreal, with many speculating that the remake project had been restarted from scratch. Since then, the game has slid from its planned 2022 to 2023 fiscal year release date, with no current release window on the books, suggesting it's probably still a good while out.
You know, one of the things that I feel like might be an issue here is I don't know when the first Prince of Persia: Sands of Time came out. I'm assuming based on the graphics like PlayStation 2. And one of the issues here is that it could be one of those scenarios where the game was considered so good back in the day because it was one of the first games to implement certain mechanics. So like if there's, rewinding time or slowing time combat and stuff like that, as long as the game's cohesive and makes sense and you have that fun mechanic, then you're like, wow, this is so, groundbreaking. But nowadays, there's so many cool game mechanics that we see, in so many different games that is not a novelty anymore. The ability to slow time or reset time or something, we see that all the time. So that's not breathtaking anymore. That's just going to be like, okay, so then it loses a huge selling point. So then the game has to be good, and that without that selling point, giving it an advantage. So I feel like it's just a different environment nowadays. I feel like it would be hard for the game to do well just based off that nowadays, but it just depends. Like, you still got to make a good game now. Back then, I mean, maybe the game I didn't play the game. Probably was good. A lot of those older games really actually had some good stuff behind them as far as the mechanics, but, and the story and stuff, but I don't know. We'll see.
Though Ubisoft Montreal has considerable AAA pedigree and is one of the publisher's flagship studios, it's tough to come back from literally years of PR damage at this point. Short of a phenomenal showing when the game is eventually reintroduced, the remake may simply be a poisoned well. It's especially unfortunate if, as many have theorized, Ubisoft developed the remake to gauge audience interest in the Prince of Persia franchise as a whole. If the remake flops due to mismanagement, it'll surely pump the brakes on any new entries. Number 4.
I was never a big fan of the Prince of Persia franchise. Like, I didn't even play I think I played like one once, and it just didn't do it for me.
AEW Fight Forever. On paper, the prospect of an
I can never get behind WWE games. I'm sure there's a niche audience for it, but I'm just like, as soon as they say, oh, it's a WWE style game, I'm like, oh, of course it's gonna flop. Like, that's just how I have a bias to feel that way.
AEW game that serves as an homage to classic AKI wrestling games like WWF No Mercy sounds like an absolute blast. But
does it though? I feel like it doesn't.
from what we've seen so far, Yikes. Development is being overseen by Ukes, who previously helmed the WWE 2K games. Yet the gameplay footage to date looks depressingly cheap, as though the homage label is being used to compensate for its lackluster presentation and mechanics. Even accepting the low budget, the visuals look hugely dated. The moment-to-moment grappling lacks the expected fluidity, and bizarre, goofy minigames have been included for some reason.
I feel like those minigames are going to be the biggest selling point, man. Like, I remember played Yakuza Like a Dragon. If that game didn't have crazy minigames, it would not have been a good game. Like, you never know. Sometimes you get lucky, and sometimes that makes the game fun.
Looks rough. And while wrestling fans desperately want a viable alternative to the WWE 2K series, this looks like it came from a team that vastly underestimated the costs of producing a quality wrestling game. Just don't be surprised if this happens to be a one-and-done effort. Number 3. Darkest Dungeon 2. The sequel to acclaimed...
What's wrong with Darkest Dungeon 2? I mean, I haven't kept up with it. Isn't it like out? I thought it was out in early access, and I'm sure they probably sold like a ton of copies.
Best-selling roguelike Darkest Dungeon released in early access in
Darkest
October
Dungeon was
2021
great.
and is imminently due to be released in earnest this coming May. But to say that the early access period has been strained is quite the understatement. An 18-month period as fans slowly made peace with the fact that Darkest Dungeon 2 wasn't nearly the sequel they wanted it to be. And while the game sold 100,000 copies on its early access release day, word of mouth has been so uniformly awful ever since that it's tough to imagine it getting close to the original's 2 million lifetime copies sold. The consensus among the fanbase is that Darkest Dungeon 2 is a mediocre, generic roguelike, pretending that it's a Darkest Dungeon game, gutting many of the first game's most popular mechanics while making the central loop more tedious and changing the art style for the worse.
Yeah, I do agree. The art style change, I didn't agree with at all in this for Darkest Dungeon 2. I mean, there was a wholesome feel to that first one to have it that way that they had it. So like, if they're gonna go this way where they're like almost 3D model looking, then they should just go all in and just have them be 3D models and just go for high fidelity Unreal Engine or something like this kind of hybrid way. It just doesn't do. Like, I didn't like how it looked. I feel like a lot of people probably feel that way.
Aspects that many of those who were waiting for the full fat release have been turned off by 18 months worth of scathing takedowns. Number 2. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Rocksteady's Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is just a few short months away from release, and things are not looking good at all. Rather than simply adapt the Batman Arkham formula into a Suicide Squad game, developers Rocksteady have designed their superhero actioner as a generic live service looter shooter, in the vein of the soon-to-shutter Marvel's Avengers. The released gameplay footage hasn't gone down well with fans at all, who've criticized the cluttered UI, excessively...
Wait, cluttered UI? I mean, it's a little... I mean, yeah, compared to Elden Ring, it's cluttered. This doesn't look cluttered at all.
Arcadey combat, egregious focus on loot and stats, odd decisions...
Egregious focus on loot. Dude, a lot of people love loot and stats. I don't know what they're talking about. I mean, on it, this game looks like it might not... I don't know.
...to give every character a gun, and Warner Brothers making the game always online.
Always online, though. I hate that. It's always so annoying.
Even if you're playing solo. WB has been working on various iterations of a Suicide Squad game since 2010. Yet, from what we've seen so far, this one feels like another Gotham Knights tier dud in the...
Wait, does even Superman have a gun? Is Superman in this and he has a gun?
Making. Sure, WB will spend a ton of money marketing it initially, but don't be shocked if it releases to wildly middling reviews, and gets a deep discount within a month or two of its release, just like Gotham Knights did. Publishers are all too keen to get in on the live service gold rush, yet without putting in sufficient care to develop a quality gameplay loop first, or consider whether a given property is even suited for it in the first place.
Unless his aim system was nuts. That honestly didn't look that bad. I mean, it looked bad to me because I'm not a fan of these ones where it's based on superheroes and stuff. But outside of the fact that it was based on superheroes and kind of like weird feeling because of that, mechanically that looked like it might actually be fun. It's hard to know with that little gameplay footage, but it didn't look that bad actually.
1. Beyond Good and Evil 2. There comes a time where players spend long enough waiting for a game that they just start losing interest. And Beyond Good and Evil 2 has gone way beyond that, for sure. The sequel entered pre-production back in 2007.
There's no way they've been working on it that long. That's how you know it got canceled at some point and then they didn't do anything for like a decade or something.
And so last year broke Duke Nukem Forever's 15-year record for the longest development period of a AAA game. Beyond Good and Evil 2 was
There's no way that they actually were working, like it had to have been like suspended for like a decade at a time, because if you're working straight through on that, I mean, we're talking like with an actual AAA budget, You probably, I don't know what, you probably spend what, like $20 billion or something?
Formally reintroduced to fans at E3 2017. But in the years since, updates have been sporadic at best. All the more so once director Michel Ancel left Ubisoft in 2020, amid accusations of a toxic workplace. Even as recently as last year, reports emerged that development had been restarted and the game was still years away from being in a release-worthy state. To make matters worse, Ubisoft Montpellier's managing director.
Dude, that actually looks really fun right there, though. I always love aerial combat like that. That stuff's so much fun. But it's another. Dude, is this video just like a takedown of Ubisoft? Where it's like every one of these games just about has been Ubisoft.
Abruptly left the studio at the start of this year, while the outfit is also facing a government investigation due to the number of employees suffering from burnout and going on sick leave. It's literally
Getting government investigation from how many employees are just burnt out on working on stuff.
unprecedented for a AAA game to linger around this long without either being released or being cancelled. When you factor in both the enormous cost of the game's development and how thoroughly its reputation has been dinged due to the constant reports of its disastrous
A spaceport research lab.
production, this thing doesn't have a chance in hell of turning a profit. And honestly,
I wouldn't say
is
that.
anyone expecting anything above aggressively mid-reviews as much as we might want it to do well? That's the end of our
I don't know about that one, man. Like it looked kind of bad. Like I didn't like that there's like animal people and stuff that felt kind of weird, but I got it. You could tell that the huge budget was pumped into that, man. Like I didn't realize Ubisoft was like, I guess the formula for Ubisoft is make money from Assassin's Creed, spend that money developing games that suck, and then go make another copy-paste Assassin's Creed game to get more money, and then make more games that nobody even hears about that kind of just suck, and just do this forever in order to pay people so people can just live. Like, I guess that's their motto. Like, I didn't realize there was this video. It's going to be so much about Ubisoft. Man, Ubisoft makes a lot of crap games. I never even realized how many of these weird games I see are made by Ubisoft. So that was interesting. I don't know that I agree with all of it, but some of those looked awful. Like the Lord of the Rings Gollum or whatever. That one just looks terrible. That looked absolutely awful. It's interesting how many bad games there are, but also I do agree with something they said in the beginning of this, which is because I'm working on making a game, for example. And if you ever go and try to make a game, like I would actually recommend you go to play an Unreal Engine for like a month and just like look up guides and start doing things. It'll give you a renewed appreciation for how much goes into these games. I can never see it the same. Anytime I'm in a game, I'm just like, oh my god, look how many objects they placed. Look how many textures they put down. Like, look what they did here. I could look at. I'm like, that must have taken. If one person did that, that would literally take like 40 hours of work to do this one part of this one level or something like that. Like, I have a brand new renewed appreciation for how hard it is to make games. And like, so a lot of times I'll see now where I'll see a game where you can tell they put so much work into this, but it's a shame that the idea for the game just sucks ass though. Like, it doesn't matter how many little blades of grass you put down. It doesn't matter how intricate of an environment you make. If the game itself sucks ass, it just sucks. And a lot of game companies make this terrible mistake now of, oh, we'll just spend like $1 billion on 3D modelers and like artists. And then we'll have like 6 programmers and we'll basically not have a game. We'll just have a visual. And it's like, the only way you get away with that is if you have like a good producer basically, and you basically are just making a movie and you do a good job at it. And it's a good story and the visuals are good. Yeah. But a lot of times people make a game that's supposed to be mechanically sound and then have like example of this, perfect example. Cyberpunk 2077. You look at the credits and things, it's like they had so many artists compared to how many programmers they had. And a lot of AAA games have like this. And so you end up with, it's like a way overdone environment, way too many objects, way too many things done with the environment, but then the programming doesn't even get done by the time the game's done. And so there's just a lot of issues with stuff like that. Anyway, this was the 9 upcoming video games being sent out to die by What Culture Gaming. I'm going to go ahead and link this in the description of this video so you guys can go and give it a like if you want to. But yeah, so that was some terrible looking games. I didn't agree. I think 2 of those actually looked okay. But we'll have to see when they actually come out whether or not these things are good.